I'll be honest, the magic system in K-pop Demon Hunters has problems. It's full of gaps and inconsistencies and lack of information that could cause some serious plot problems. And yet, the movie is so good. It's so freaking good. And the magic system is absolutely perfect for the story it is trying to tell. Seriously, at the end of rewatching the movie, no actual notes about the magic system. I don't think they needed to change anything. So how can that be? How can we have a system that is deeply flawed, but also flawless? Well, that's exactly what we're going to get into in this video. We're going to take a closer look at the K-pop Demon Hunter magic system, and we're going to break it down by looking at things like the Reality Plus spheres, some of the core components, talking about capabilities, and then getting into some of the problems, why they could be issues, and ultimately why some of them aren't, and what you can learn from it for you in your future stories. Oh, and this video absolutely contains spoilers, so you've been warned. I'm Clark Rowenson, the Magic Engineer, and your guide to stories beyond reality. Okay, here's a quick summary of the magic system. It really breaks down into three major parts. First, you have demons. Demons exist, they live in the shadow world, and they hunt humans and devour their souls. Then you have the hunters, who are humans with special abilities that can use their voices and magic in order to fight the demons. But more importantly, they can use their abilities to connect with their fans and the people of the world and bind that energy together into a barrier called the Hanmoon, which is used to keep the demons out. Supposedly, if the Hanmoon is strengthened enough, it will turn golden, at which point it will lock away the demons forever, becoming a permanent, completely impermeable barrier. Obviously, the demons don't want that. They want our tasty, tasty souls. Oh, and one of the hunters is part demon. So yeah, spoilers, but it's important. That's the system in a nutshell, which means now it's time to do the technical analysis. Man, I love this part. We could break this down in two ways. One is to consider this one big system, at which point it is a clear blend of creature and magic. Or we could consider it two separate systems where the demons are one system sitting wholly in the creature sphere, and the hunters and their abilities is the magic. It's fully sitting in a magic sphere. And they're crossing over and blending together. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to talk about it as one system. Just know that you could break it down either way, depending on how you want to look at it. Quick side note of something that I thought was interesting. If they had presented the Hanmoon a little bit differently, that could have changed the dynamic of this magic system. If they had presented it as something that naturally existed, a naturally occurring veil between our world and the demons that the hunters were simply strengthening, then the Hanmoon itself would sit more in the fundamental forces sphere, giving us a blend across more spheres than we have initially. But it's not, it's entirely created by the hunters, so it sits firmly in the realm of the magic that the hunters perform. But I just thought that was interesting and worth mentioning because of all the different ways that we can use this to kind of construct a version of this Reality Plus system. And if those terms that I was using was just a bunch of white noise, you can go learn more about Reality Plus and basics of the spheres right over here. Let's go ahead and talk about the core building blocks of this magic system. All Reality Plus systems are made up from a handful of core components. You've got capabilities, which is all about what it is and what it can and can't do. You have mechanics and rules, which is about how it can and can't do those things. Structures and patterns, which kind of gives it the overall shape of what you're looking at. Then you have integration threads about why it matters, how it connects in, and the implications that your system creates. And then you also have presentation and how you skin it, right? The way you put things on and the sensations you tie around it to give it a particular feel. The list of capabilities in K-pop Demon Hunter is a bit eclectic. Let's start with the hunters. There's a couple things we see them do frequently, such as summoning their weapons and crafting and reinforcing the Hanmoon. We also know that they can destroy the disguises that the demons put around themselves, and then there's a bunch of things that they seem to be able to do sometimes, such as flying or doing attack and energy projections. The demon abilities primarily center around moving from the Shadow Realm into our world, devouring souls, and then they can teleport and seem to be able to phase through walls. Now, the information and details around that phasing is vague and raises so many questions, but I'm getting ahead of myself already. Those are the main things that they can do. Oh, and they can disguise themselves so that they don't stand out as obvious demons, which is helpful. The system is actually fairly light on structure, patterns, mechanics, and rules. And I know I said that all systems have these, and I think they do. It's just they're very minimal here. Most of what we have is centered around the Hanmoon or stuff that is shown to us. So like one rule or kind of pattern we have is Rumi and her demon marks. They spread over time, and it is connected to her shame. That much is abundantly clear. Basically everything else is about the Hanmoon, right? We know it is there to keep the demons out. We know it is connected to the fans. It is clearly connected to the music. Its strength and integrity is all connected to the fans. That's the main thing. Most of it focuses on the Hanmoon, unless the rest of it is kind of just left alone. The component this system uses the most are integration threads, and they are everywhere. The system has integration threads into every aspect of the story. And more impressively, it actually has threads into every aspect of the story medium, which is crazy, but more on that later. For now, let's go ahead and talk about some of the variables from the Magic System Blueprint. Mapping a Reality Plus system onto the Magic System Blueprint can tell you a lot about how the system works, as well as how it can fit into the story and into the world. In order to save time, we're just going to focus on the ones that I think are most distinct and most important for this system. If you'd like to see the full blueprint breakdown of K-pop Demon Hunters, you can find that over on my Patreon. I think this system is actually a hard, irrational system, which is not what I first thought. So let's go ahead and take at the most obvious, which is the rational-irrational spectrum. This spectrum is all about how easily people can understand the way things work and predict things they haven't seen yet. It's a lot about if this, then that kind of statements. And K-pop Demon Hunters does not have much in the way of that. There isn't really anything that we can anticipate. There aren't many IFTT statements or anything in the system. Really all we know, everything we know in terms of rules and mechanics, centers around the Hanmoon and just the Hanmoon. It kind of happens as the writers wanted it to happen, which moves it very clearly over onto the irrational side of things. The hard and soft spectrum is all about how much of the system is known or understood. I initially thought that this was a soft system. I mean, there's so many questions that we have and so many things that we don't know and so many things that aren't explained. But then when I looked closer, most of the questions center around the rational-irrational thing. Why does this work this way? Why can't they do it in these other places here? But when we actually look at the breadth of the system of everything it can do and everything that's included, I actually feel like we are shown the majority of it. It doesn't seem like there's any kind of hidden depths or hidden abilities that we haven't really touched on in the movie. Like, we're shown what exists. Now, if they went into talking about different types of hunters, different kinds of vocal forms or details about the Hanmoon or different abilities that like Celine had that they don't have, that could have changed things. If there was more information and more variance in the demons, that also would have changed things. We know that there are different types. We know we have the water demons and whatever kind of demon that Jinoo is. We have the creature demons, but we don't know any beyond that. We don't know if there's really classifications, how much the classifications matter, if that leads to different kinds of abilities. Really what we're left with is it just seems like the demons are kind of a homogeneous set with very similar abilities across all of them, which again leads to this thing of it feels like it's fairly completely explored, even if the rationale and logic and information behind it isn't. The prevalence of the Reality Plus system and the elements, I peg at medium high, because there's a small number of hunters. There's only 3 hunters every generation, but the Hanmoon is everywhere. It wraps around the entire world, not to mention that the demons are, in theory, everywhere. They can get anywhere and everywhere. And there's a vast number of them. We don't know how many actually, but we see hundreds, if not thousands of them just over the course of the movie. So with all of that combined, medium high. What is fascinating, though, is to have this set at medium high while so few people actually know about the existence of the Reality Plus system, of the demons and the Hanmoon. But that's actually something that's really common in most urban fantasy. And now that I'm thinking about it, I'm wondering if I need to include some kind of awareness variable or something in the blueprint. Oh God, did I make a mistake? It's fine. I'll fix it one day. One day. That brings us to transference, which is all about how easily the Reality Plus abilities can be obtained, lost, handed off, all of that kind of thing. For this system, which also includes the learning of the abilities, I place that at medium high. And before you try and argue with me, please remember, I can't hear you shouting at the screen. And also there's a bunch of inconsistencies around this that we're gonna need to talk about in a little bit. And then there's source, which is especially interesting for this system because all of the sources are infinite. Why is the source infinite? Well, because if we look at the demons, we don't ever have to worry about them running out of demon power. They can just be demons, doing demon things, teleporting, and generally being nasty and trying to get those souls. The hunters also, they have their abilities basically all the time. We don't see them run out of the ability to perform the magic they have. We could argue about the voice, about the loss of their voice and whether that makes that renewable or not. I think that's a separate thing and leans more towards infinite, especially when we then look at the Hanmoon, which as long as there are people and fans to feel and believe in the music that the hunters are creating, the power source for the Hanmoon is infinite. So even if we want to quibble about the voice between the combination of that, the demons and the Hanmoon, I'm confident in saying it's infinite. But that's not the interesting bit. The interesting bit is the combination of internal and external sources. With the demons and the hunters, the abilities come from inside. They generate it themselves. But the Hanmoon is external. It comes from everybody else in the world. And that creates an interesting dynamic where the hunters can continually attempt to do things, but this external source can still be a problem and still be messed with. That's what Jinu's entire plan is centered around, is disrupting the connection between this barrier and the external source of its power, which is super cool to have multiple versions like that in one system. There are other variables in the Magic System Blueprint, but I want to keep this video as short as I can, not ramble too much, and just focus on the ones that are most important to this system. Which brings us to the least fun part about this video, where we need to talk about the problems and all of the places where the system and the movie falls short. For starters, there's several places where the story and the system contradict themselves, or potentially contradict themselves. For one, we're told that the hunter's abilities are all tied to the music and their voice. But then we have several fight scenes where they aren't using their music or their voices in order to aid in their fighting or to summon their weapons, such as the fight in the bathhouse or when Rumi is trying to take Jinu on one-on-one. I also have questions about who can be hunters, because we're told by Selene that there are people born with voices that can be used to drive back the darkness. But at the same time, we're also told that every generation there are 3 that are chosen to become the hunters. And that raises a number of questions. Is it something that people can be trained? Is it truly an innate ability that must then be trained? If so, why only 3 in the entire world? There's a lot of questions and things that don't make a ton of sense the second we start looking at them a little deeper. There's also a bunch of places that things happen inconsistently or just at the convenience of the story. For example, the hunters flying and demons teleporting. If the hunters can fly, why don't they do that more? If the demons can teleport at will, why don't they do that more? If it is them teleporting between our world and the shadow world, and that's actually what they're doing, same thing when they're phasing through walls, why doesn't the Hanmoon have more impact? Jinu seems to be able to teleport basically at will. Why isn't that interfering with him at all in any way that we can see? Not to mention the part where Rumi just miraculously gives Jinu his soul back and then he gives it to her in turn. How did that happen? We didn't know that could happen. That was crazy. So that's just to name a few things, because there doesn't seem to be any real rhyme or reason as to when things happen or why things happen. They happen just because they're cool and because we... Is that a pitchfork? Where did you even get that? Listen. I love this movie. Just hang on. I told you this is going to be the hardest part. Lastly, and most noticeably, are all the places that the system is unclear, ambiguous, or unexplained. like how the demons work. How exactly do they get through the Hanmoon? And what's with the bird and the tiger? Are they the only animal demons? Are there other animal demons? Are there some demons that have always been demons, or are all demons, were they once human? Is the recovery of souls something that any demon can do? Once they recover their soul, are they human again? What abilities do they have? How do they work? Like, can they be trapped? Can they be banished? Can they only be killed? When you kill them, are they actually dead? So many questions about the demons alone. Then there's questions about how the Hanmoon works. We saw that Rumi could affect the Hanmoon with like her demon voice. Is she the only one that can do that? How are the Saja boys actually disrupting the Hanmoon? Are they actually gaining their own influence with the fans and using that to tear at the Hanmoon? Or is it simply depriving it of the power and that's causing leaks and barriers as demons attack from the other side? We really don't know. And what about the hunters? Are there other things they can do? Can they use their magic to trap people? We have the Hanmoon that keeps the demons in the shadow world. Could they create versions of the Hanmoon that trap people inside buildings? And why are the 3 hunters the only people using these abilities in the entire world? Like, if there's other people born with it, surely they're using it instinctively at least. Are they eradicating other hunters? Like, what's going on here? Just questions. So many questions. Because then I mentioned them already, but the bird and the tiger, I want to know more. The tiger was very cute. I want to know if there's more of those tigers. I want to know if the tigers are bad. I want to know if the tigers are actually demons. So many things that are just not explained. And what about Rumi? Was her dad actually a demon, or was that an assumption that Celine made about her as a child? How are demons formed? Is it entirely about the shame and giving into the shame? Is it actually a genetic thing? There's so many interesting things to be explored in terms of the messaging around shame and acceptance, and we don't have enough information to know how it really works. And I mentioned again how the demons work, but Guima, is Guima dead? Is Guima just banished? What's going on there? What is it they have actually achieved at the end of the movie? We see the Hanmoon has changed from being the blue it was, it's not golden, now it's a kind of rainbow. What does that mean? What does that signify? I want to know everything. Everything. Oh, great. Now you have a torch too. Just hang on. We're almost through the section, I promise. The list of questions and contradictions and points of confusion just goes on and on. Granted, some of this might be addressed in Korean mythology, of which I am not familiar, but I think we can agree that there's a lot potentially wrong or potentially lacking in this system. Hey, let me finish. As I was saying, I think we can agree there's a lot potentially wrong with this system. That said, I think we can also agree that none of these problems actually matter, despite the gaps and the contradictions and the unexplained portions and these things that we want to know. This system is exactly what it needs to be for the story. Hopefully you are a little mollified and the urge to lynch me has passed. Please do ride that feeling and take a moment to like and subscribe. It helps this channel tremendously. How can it be the perfect system for the story while still being so full of these mistakes and problems? Well, it really comes down to 2 things. We have the integration threads and how it connects into the story and how it meets the needs of the story medium. So let's look at those one at a time. I said this before, and I'm going to say it again. The integration threads abound. It is so tightly woven into the characters. It is inseparable because of what it does for their identity, their capability, their motivations, their goals, what they need, their character arcs. And this is true for all of the major characters of Rumi, Zoe, Mira, and Jinu. You can't separate it from them. In a similar vein, it can't be extracted from the setting either. If we didn't have this system, the setting and the plot would fall flat. Even in just the first 5 to 6 minutes, we are given the 2 most important and foundational pieces of information about the demons and the Hanmoon, and that changes everything. Because if there were no demons, then there would be no Hanmoon. If there was no Hanmoon, there would be no need for the Huntrix. If there was no Huntrix team, then we definitely wouldn't have Rumi, and then Jinu wouldn't need to bypass anything. Nothing would happen if we didn't have those 2 core pieces right at the beginning. And then there's how it ties into the genre and the tropes. K-pop Demon Hunter pulls a lot from some classic anime tropes like magic girls or the magic idol anime style things like we see with Sailor Moon, or, let me say this carefully, mermaid melody peachy peachy pitch. It takes these tropes and it builds on them and it connects them and makes it the foundation of the system that then ties into everything else. And it's great. It's super cool. They do it in a way that hits the core of these tropes, but then brings it forth in new subversions that lovers of the old trope are going to dig and people who didn't like the old trope also enjoy. It's just brilliantly done. But it doesn't stop there either. The Reality Plus system is deeply tied into and fuels the core themes of this movie. This movie does a wonderful, gut-wrenching, tear-jerking job of introspecting on things like trust and friendship and shame and transparency and acceptance of our flaws. And just every one of these themes is reflected and manifested and driven by this system. It's so good. Okay, I'm calming down. That's the integration threads. It is also marvelously connected to the actual story medium itself. And this is something I don't feel people talk a lot about, but different mediums definitely have different strengths and needs to them. And K-pop Demon Hunters did a great job seeing those, acknowledging those, and working with those. I'll show you what I mean. Consider novels. Novels have a number of strengths to them. The biggest one is just how much screen time they have. We have hundreds of pages and thousands of words for us to explore characters, character arcs, tropes, the plot, all of these things, right? If you think about it, even just a moderate standard fantasy novel has about 7 to 9 hours in audiobook format. That's 3 to 4 times as long as most movies. It's a major benefit that novels have over anything else. They also have the benefit of getting us the closest to the characters that we possibly can. By tying the narrative to the deep POV of the characters, we get to see more of who they are, how they react, what they're thinking, what they're feeling. We get more of a sense of our main characters than we can in any other storytelling format. But as with anything, there's the good and then there's some weaknesses as well. One of the main strengths of novels is also the weakness, which is the length of the story. Because the longer we have to sit and experience the telling of a story, the more time we have to scrutinize it, which means different things are easier to critique and spot in novels than they are in other story formats. And the most obvious problem is that novels are limited to text. We don't have any visuals, we don't have any audios. Even when we do the audiobooks, it's just people reading the audio. We don't get to hear any music, we don't hear any sound effects, unless they put in the extra effort to do that. And then that kind of becomes a mixed bag because that can be really annoying and disruptive. But let's shift over to graphic novels and comic books, right? Where they gain some advantages over books, but then they also lose some as well. The main thing that they gain is the visuals. It's no longer just the text. We can be given exact pictures. The biggest downside is there's a huge change in the screen time that we have, the amount of length that we have. And anybody who has tried to do both writing and graphic novels or comics, you know what I'm talking about. Most graphic novels are actually something closer to a short story, maybe a novella. You have to have a real honker of a graphic novel for it to be anything close to a full normal novel. What we gain from the visuals of this format change, we also lose in terms of closeness to the characters, because it feels awkward to just have paragraphs of thought. And we can see that in some comics and stuff like that. You'll have varying opinions on whether people like it or not, but you don't have as much space to explore what's in the head. We get some distance between the characters and us that didn't exist on the novel side of things. Now let's move all the way over to the audiovisual media of films and TV. Films have the shortest runtime of all of the formats. Like we talked about, it's about a third of a book at best. So you're really dealing with something more like a novel. Now, we do have some workarounds. It's what we have been seeing lately in the trajectory of TV shows. That's why Game of Thrones was able to work. It's part of why some of the newer shows have been working, is they've been focusing on arcs. So then you are getting the 7 to 9 hours of runtime you need to create the equivalent of a book. But that's off topic. I just want to focus on films. This time limitation affects more than just the length of our plot, right? We don't have as much time to explore characters and who they are and how they change. We don't have as much time for explanation. We can't get into the world building as deep. We just don't have options. We've got to keep things moving. And it's gotta keep going. Just like with graphic novels, we generally can't get inside the main character's head. There are some avant-garde kind of films and things where we get to see some of that, but most of the standard formats don't do that. We certainly don't get that in K-pop Demon Hunters, which means we have to spend screen time sharing that information in different ways. And those really are the two biggest limitations around telling stories in the audiovisual film format. I can't stress this enough. We need to be talking about these more because these two limitations of movies is the main reason that so many book to film adaptations fail. There are others, but those are the big ones. And I just wish people would talk about it because seriously, how many times do we have to step on the same freaking pitchfork before we learn to... I'm okay. Book adaptation frustrations aside, film has tremendous strengths as well. And they're very obvious. Why? Because we can see and hear them, right? We get the visual input, we get the audio input, but most importantly, we can experience all of them simultaneously. Because that's something, again, if we go back to the books, it's very sequential. You have to describe the setting, then you can describe the sound. You can't do both at once. Film can do all of these things at once, which allows us to layer these impactful moments between something that's strikingly visual, what somebody is saying, the music that we're hearing, and the emotions that are being expressed. All of that can be compacted into these just perfect moments of cinema. This story simply wouldn't work as a novel. We would lose too much from the loss of visual and auditory elements. All of the problems that we talked about before would become too apparent. Things would become too obvious. I could write. Rumi steps onto the stage, her voice low, breaking through the silence. And she says, "Nothing but the truth now. Nothing but the proof now." And she continues, reciting another few lines, and breaks into the main chorus of, "I broke into a million pieces, and I can't look back, but now I'm seeing all the beauty in the broken glass." Now that could be a really good scene in a book, but we're losing a lot. Even if we turned it into a graphic novel and we had the snapshots where, again, she's walking across the stage. She starts singing the lines as every eye turns to her. Impactful, amazing, but not as amazing as this.
I broke into a million pieces and I can't go back, but now I'm seeing all the beauty in the broken glass. The scars are part of me, darkness and harmony, my voice without the lies, this is what it sounds like.
And these stacked, unified moments are what K-pop Demon Hunter is all about. It is about the story and the character growth, but it's also about how we laugh and how we cry and the shame we feel and how the music makes us feel and how it makes us involuntarily bob our shoulders. It's about those feelings you have as you see yourself in the characters and see your own struggles. It's about the tears that you spill as the girls join together and accept each other for who they are, and as Jinu finally makes some acceptance of his own and has his revelation and his redemption. It's about all of these things. I love this movie so much. I'm not crying, you're crying. Ultimately, this Reality Plus system had to be experienced in this format in order for it to reach its true potential. Not only that, this story had to have this Reality Plus system in order to reach its potential. Every integration thread reinforced the core of the experience of the movie and of the story. It takes advantage of the strengths of the medium and leverages some things that would potentially be a weakness. It takes all of these things and combines them into a glorious and beautiful whole. So what can we learn from what I think is a masterpiece of cinema? Because we absolutely should be learning from this piece of cinema. Well, for starters, it's just an incredible example of an irrational, partially explained system. Over the past decade or so, we have seen a rapid preference for more hard, more rational systems. And a lot of that is because of like Brandon Sanderson and Patrick Rothfuss and the rise of Lit RPG and Matt Denneman with Dungeon Crawler Carl. But this is a great showcase of what irrational systems can be and what they can do for the stories and what they can do for us. The most important thing I think we can learn from K-pop Demon Hunters is the importance of understanding what our system needs to be. Having a clear view of the strengths and weaknesses of our medium and the story we're trying to tell and how our Reality Plus system is going to integrate that is just unparalleled. If you tie it together, it creates an experience that unifies everything and simultaneously elevates all of these things, making it so that the problems just don't matter. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Does K-pop Demon Hunters have a perfect magic system / Reality Plus system? No, it does not. But it does have a system that is perfectly matched for the story and for the experience that they are trying to deliver. I really, really like this movie, if you couldn't tell. The story is so moving, the music is infectious, and honestly, what it sounds like makes me feel simultaneously immensely courageous and makes me cry. If you already like this movie, hopefully this gave you new ways to appreciate it. If you haven't seen this movie, I hope it convinces you to do so because it is absolutely worth your time. If you ever find somebody who's truly being a hater about K-pop Demon Hunters, don't worry, I'll be right next to you with a pitchfork of my own. If you liked this kind of system breakdown and system review, let me know in the comments. If you have a specific system that you want me to review and break down, again, you can let me know in the comments. But I will be honest, you will get more traction if you give me the suggestion over on my Patreon. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. But whatever you do, until next time, make sure that you keep writing and stay awesome.
The fans! Yeah, I need like 10,000 calories to get through the choreo. 1,000%. A gajillion%. Mira, that's not even a real number. It is for our fans. Our fans deserve the best.